Good morning. All right. How's everyone doing today? Yeah, we're a little bit fewer right now because I think some people can't handle the casino and the liquor quite as well. But hey, that's what a con's for. Welcome to day 2 of ShowMeCon. Did you guys enjoy the first day? Awesome. I had a blast. One of the downsides to organizing the con is I can't sit in every single talk. But I'm excited to, when they get on irongeek.com, to be able to check them out. All right, so a couple of announcements. I know some people were asking about speaker slides. Now, we're trying to make this a con for everyone. And as a speaker, we don't like to give out our slides. That's why the way that Adrian does his talks, you will see the slides. He does it in a very interesting way. In fact, last year when he came to talk, he said, I can do it better. In fact, when I said, can you speak this year? He goes, only if I can record. Deal. Done. So if you want to replay the talks, you will be able to get the slides. You'll be able to see the slides on the talks. If the speaker wants to give out their slides, that is up to them. But however, as a speaker, that's something we typically don't like to do. Make it happy for everyone. Make sense? All right. Well, I have 2 books real quick to give away because they're getting kind of heavy here. The first book that I have is The Tangle Web, A Guide to Securing Web Applications. Again, this is from our friends at No Starch Press. Is Dan Davis in the room? There we go, Dan Davis. There you go, sir. There will be a test at the end of the book. All right, the next book that we have is the Practical Network Security Monitoring. The practice. That makes more sense. The practice of network security monitoring. Is Dave East in here? Oh, there he is. Okay, Dave East. We will be testing your network at the end of the day. All right. I know everybody's here to see the speaker, so we'll get this through pretty quick. Some people were asking WashU and Kate about their master's program. The recruiter is here today. If you look on the back of your program, you guys like the venue? You like the food? You like the odds at the slot machines? No? Okay. Well, 2 out of 3 ain't bad. We have already booked for next year, June 8th and 9th, back here for the 2nd annual ShowMeCon. Please come. We will have training beforehand as well. We have already given an open invitation to all the speakers that were here last year, but we want to add more speakers. Now, one thing I want to ask from you, 2 things. Like my wife, the list keeps getting longer and longer. First things first, we are going to do a call for papers. Please, please, please submit. I'd love to get more St. Louis people in here, more people that aren't on the professional speaking track. I mean, I remember the first time I spoke, when I came in, I'm like, I have absolutely nothing to say. And then you realize, hey, some of the stuff I see, other people see. Okay? The only requirement we have with the speaking is that it's not a sales pitch and it's relevant to the people in the crowd. All right? So I think everybody here has some stories they can tell. Number 2, parameters putting this on, but we want it to be for everyone. We want everybody to enjoy it. So if there's things we can do to add that you would like to see, extra training, different types of speaking tracks, whatever. I can't get you free slot machine tickets. Please let us know. We will start announcing keynotes in the next couple months. We have a couple that we're talking to, and there's some very, very, very cool people. All right, on with the show. I think I got everything. Oh, okay. Sorry. I'm like, did I turn this off? September 26th, 28th, DerbyCon, Louisville, Kentucky. Adrian, can you stand up real quick? If you don't know who Adrian is, he is the guy with the lighted hat, Adrian Crenshaw. Yes. 26th through 28th with training beforehand. It's on derbycon.com. It was a very late night. Adrian also makes homemade mead, which made for a late night last night. Adrian and Dave Kennedy of Trusted Sec put this on. There you go. We carpool down there. Let us know if you want to go with us. That's the one that we like to go to and just have fun with. It is a great con. In fact, a lot of the speakers, including our next keynote, I got to see there, and it's a good time. So, without further ado, I'd like to go ahead and introduce you to the first keynote of day 2, Andy Ellis. Andy Ellis is, I'm going to say it again, Akamai Technology. He will tell us how to say it correctly. Chief Security Officer, responsible for overseeing the security architecture and compliance of the company's massive, globally distributed network. Anybody that's ever done incident response realizes they are everywhere. He is the designer and patent holder of Akamai's SSL acceleration network, as well as several of the critical technologies underpinning the company's Kona security solutions. Andy is at the forefront of internet policy as a speaker, a blogger, member of the FCC CSRIC, supporting Akamai's CEO on the NAST and NSTAC, and as an advisory board member of HackKid, which is a great organization. He's a graduate of MIT and former U.S. Air Force officer, the recipient of the CSO Magazine Compass Award, the Air Force Commendation Medal, the Wine Spectator's Award of Excellence, and the Spirit of Disneyland Award. And he can be found on Twitter at CSO Andy. It is my pleasure to welcome Andy Ellis.
Thanks, Dave. I guess as a professional speaker, my slides are available in addition to being up on Adrian's website. So welcome, everybody. You're all here today. I had to throw injection into the title of my slides so that it would appeal to hackers, right? This is about how to change the way people think by understanding the language in which we think, right? What is neuro-linguistic programming? It's about understanding cognitive science. It's about grasping how the human brain operates. Because we want to ask one question and be able to answer it. And that question basically comes down to, why do people make bad decisions? Why do they do things like check-in software to an important cryptographic library just before midnight on New Year's Eve, giving the rest of us a problem a couple years later? Why do they roll out software that has known security flaws? Why do they do these things? These are bad, right? And all through our lives, we run into people making bad decisions. Now, when we say bad, we're being polite. What most of us are probably thinking is stupid, right? Why did you do such a stupid thing? Why did you get up this morning? Or why were you out late last night so that it was hard to get up and you're not even in your seats yet? Lots of things like this. Now, the actual important thing to do is change that question, because you've already made a judgment call. If you accuse somebody of being stupid, you have already decided that they are stupid, not that you can't comprehend their decision. And that's an important part of changing other people, is to first change yourself. To understand that you don't know everything, that you don't live in their world. We see these conversations between a business owner and between somebody in security. I had do several conversations in this venue But when we think about this conversation, it helps to put ourselves into shoes that might be similar. How many people in here drive a car? Great, a lot of you. Aren't pedestrians really obnoxious? They don't pay attention. They're always like walking when we would like to turn and they get in our way, right? They make these incomprehensible decisions. See a couple heads nodding, might be a little. How many people in here are ever a pedestrian? You walk down the street. Aren't drivers assholes? They're always trying to turn when I've got the right of way to walk, and they drive around in this armored vehicle and they honk at me and they flip me off. But I am never the unobservant pedestrian, nor am I the asshole driver. Right? Everybody sees the other person as the adversary. Doesn't matter which role you're in, you'll see the other person as the adversary. We call this modal bias. The mode that you are in, you are biased to assume is the right one. How many security professionals act to keep IT from rolling out some new technology because it hasn't been tested and vetted and we don't know how safe it is, and then turn around to roll out the latest and greatest security technology or hacking tool that hasn't been tested or vetted yet? Right? When we're in the mode of the security person, we say safety is paramount. But when we are trying to own our own business, we forget that. So the problem looks something like this. And this is the mode that many people are trapped in. A business owner is going to come over to security and say, hey, I've got this new project. Is it safe? Now, first of all, let's think about that word, safe. How many people in here know what safe means? Excellent. Most people caught that that was a trick question. I don't know what safe means. Right? It reminds me of Caspar Weinberger, who once said, as Secretary of Defense, he was asked what one of his largest challenges was. He said, look, I have the US military working for me, and they use these words that they don't understand what they mean. If, for instance, I said, I need you to go secure a building, I need to understand that different things will happen. Because if I tell the Marines to secure a building, they will charge the building and kill everybody inside it and probably, for good measure, blow the building up too. Right. If I tell the Army to secure a building, they will request that I give them sufficient sandbags and concertina wire to build a perimeter around the building, set up zones of enfilading fire, and ensure that nobody can approach it unless they have the password of the day. If I tell the Navy to secure a building, they will ensure that the lights are all turned off, the doors are all locked, and the windows are closed. And if I ask the Air Force to secure a building for me, they will take out a 3-year lease with an option to buy. Safe is one of those words. It means different things to different people. So the business asks us if it's safe, and we respond with a checklist. We say, well, here is ISO 27002, or pick your favorite standard, which really is a list of every mistake that everyone has ever made, and how not to have made that specific mistake in that specific environment. It probably doesn't apply to you. That's OK. But please fill this out and prove that you haven't made any of these mistakes that other people might have made. Now, I love these. I love when you're doing these to talk about you key-based authentication, and somebody's asking you what your password rotation policy is on those keys. You're like, how do these things even go together? But that's OK. If you want to have a lot of fun, be a vendor. People send you their ISO checklists, except they all add to the bottom a couple of extra questions, which list all of the mistakes that they have ever made. So you get great insight into the history of their incidents. Now, this is a very complicated checklist, so they ask us to fill it out for them, which is great, guaranteed employment. You ask me if this is safe, and now I have to do extra work for you, which means I get to do more work. And I'm the one who decides exactly how much work I get to do. Public choice theory at work, right here inside our organizations. So we fill it out, and then we talk about esoteric risk with them. We say, well, you haven't chosen the best of hash functions because MD5 is mostly deprecated. Actually, it's really well deprecated. And you thought SHA-1 was good, but you should really be thinking about Poly 1305. Now, I glaze over just saying that, and I understand what those algorithms are. Our business partners are like, oh, what? I was using the same library that the next guy did. So what they really want to know if this is a showstopper. Right? Can I proceed? Can I do my launch anyway? Because that's what safe meant to me. Safe meant that I could launch my project. And we got told as security professionals for many years that what we wanted, the power we wanted, was to answer this question, was that you had to get our approval. Right? When I was coming up through the ranks of security, this is what every piece of advice at conferences said, is that you want to be in the approval pipeline. When somebody wants to launch a new product, they need to ask for your approval. Guess what? It's a trap. Because if you say, why, yes, it is safe, you own the risk. Anything goes wrong, it's your fault, you approved this. And if you say no, they're going to ignore you anyway. And in fact, now you're labeled as a problem, and they're going to work around you. And in fact, they'll probably just throw more and more of these at you to get you to keep saying no so that everybody can see how much of a no you are. Not a great place to be. Now, why is it this way? There's some apocryphal research done in the 50s, didn't actually quite happen this way, but it makes a great story anyway, about some cognitive scientists who were studying how monkeys in society worked. And they took 5 monkeys, and they put them into a room, and they put a novel object on the table. They don't actually tell us what the novel object was. And what do you think monkeys do when you put something new into a room, right? They go look at it, at which point they sprayed them with a fire hose. Monkeys learned. Novel object means being hosed down by water. Now, they probably should have learned that cognitive scientists, researchers are rude and mean people, but they didn't quite. And now you take out one monkey and you bring in another monkey, and you put a novel object in. Well, what does the new monkey do? Goes to look at the object, except 4 monkeys tackle him. You can repeat this until there are no monkeys left in the room. And they don't know why to be afraid of novel objects, but people have always told them to. Our organizations don't know why to be afraid of us, but everybody tells them that we are hard to work with, and therefore they don't want to. So they put it off until the last minute. Historical paranoia. Now, it's important to understand these motivations. So cognitive scientists and economists have been working for years to study the human brain. So we do this game called the prisoner's dilemma. If you're not familiar with the prisoner's dilemma, it goes like this. Alice and Bob have committed some crime. They have been caught by the police. And we don't have enough evidence to convict them without a confession. But we can get them on a lesser charge. So we're going to offer each of them a deal. The deal is you can cooperate with your accomplice, or you can cheat and rat them out or defect. And we're offering them the same deal at the same time. You're in separate rooms, and you can choose. Now, if you both cooperate, we can get you on this lesser crime, 3 years in jail. Now, if they cheat and rat you out, and you don't rat them out, you're taking the whole heat. You're going in jail for 10 years. Now, if you cheat on them, you defect and tell us, we'll put you in jail for 1 year, we'll go light on you, you're not getting off all the way. Now, I have to tell you that if you both defect, we're putting you in jail for 5 years. Now, this is your deal, Alice. I'm giving Bob the same deal. So you'd better pick quickly. Now, we've been doing this research for years on grad students because it's inhumane to conduct research on monkeys. And so what we've learned is that people will only cooperate with each other 13% of the time. Humans cheat badly. They really don't work well together. In fact, 40% of the time we can get both of them to rat each other out. Isn't that awesome? This is what's inside the human brain, we think. I'll come back to this. Now, what we want to do is increase value. How do we measure value? How do you know if at the end of the day you added value to your company, to the world, to yourself? It's really hard. But I can measure it simply with a proxy. I can say, look, the value that I created is the resources that I applied and how well I applied them. Whoops, I clicked backwards. Now, resources, time and money. Of course, to your CFO, it's all just money, because they buy time with money. I wish I could pull that one off. I could live a lot longer. Capabilities, though, that's the tricky one. So capabilities is your skill, your effort, and your effectiveness. If you ask Adrian to record something, he's going to do it very well. If you ask me to, I don't have a lot of skill. Now, I might make up with it by working harder, more effort, although I kind of doubt I could beat him on that one. And then there's effectiveness. Are you in the right place at the right time? How many times have you done work that you applied great skill with good effort and then your company threw it away? Or you had to. The world moved on. You were ineffective. So you can at least look at these three things as proxies for value. And they're multiplicative. If I have no skill, I'm likely producing little value. If I don't have good effort, and now that doesn't mean that I'm hardworking. If people heard of manager and maker time. Anybody here a software developer? Write code? Takes you about 4 hours to get anything done, doesn't it? You can't work in smaller blocks now. You can't pick up, work for 30 seconds, and come back and figure out what you were thinking. That's how makers tend to operate, in these large time blocks. Managers love 30 minutes to 1 hour, right? That's just enough time to learn what's going on with the project, tamper with it, and move on. Well, if I schedule a meeting like that every 2 hours in your day, my makers are not effective anymore. They can't do any effort because they can't get into their code. So effort is sometimes an environmental trait as well. Now, what are we trying to do with value? What we're trying to do with value in the security profession is manage perceived risk. So we should think of risk as being this sort of steady state, we're being pushed up with risk, and we're going to apply value to counter that down. So as the world moves on, risk comes in and we react to it and we push it down. Vulnerabilities happen, we patch. Breaches happen, we do incident response. You can put in whatever that you want. Now, we make some assumptions about this, which is that if there are more risks, we will get more money. And if there are less risks, we get less money. But interestingly enough, is that if we don't think that we have a lot of capability, and the world isn't getting noticeably worse, so we're not pushing down very hard and we can see that, but the world feels about the same, we actually think that the risks aren't there, that there's less risk. We tell ourselves stories. Humans are great at telling ourselves stories because we do not live in the real world. Right? Why don't we live in the real world? There's lots of reasons for that, but we have some great evidence. So a simple thing a lot of people ask is how much security is good enough? So let's put on a scale and say, there's good enough security, whatever this arbitrary thing is. Now we can suspect that if you're good, you're at least better than the casual adversary. If I have good security, then somebody random who decides to attack me today isn't going to get in by the end of the day. That seems like a reasonable metric for good. Now, probably if you're good, it means that a persistent adversary who is well-funded and capable probably is better than I am. Now, I might be better than they are, and let's call that perfect security. The persistent adversary is always getting better and will always have some avenue. Now, in between this, there's ways that we can improve. How do we improve? Well, we go ask somebody for help. So we can go get a good assessor and say, hey, tell me what I could do better. Now, most people don't hire good assessors because what they're really interested in doing is proving to themselves that they're at least good enough. And the reality is that auditors live in the past. If you're PCI compliant, you're looking at a standard that functionally was written 15 years ago. It has been modified and updated, but not really. We've added in, thou shalt have a WAF. It's about the only meaningful change to PCI. So even a serious auditor isn't going to tell you you're good enough. Go witness Target. Now the reality is, standard auditors aren't even as good as the serious auditors, and most people want to fool them. Why do we want to fool them? Because failing an audit doesn't help you improve your security. Failing an audit has material consequences to your business. It is an unacceptable loss. You hire good assessors and bad auditors. That's the industry norm. I'm sorry if there's anybody in the room who works for an auditor. I strongly recommend in the long run, aim for being an assessor instead. Now, what happens is organizations end up down here at the bottom of the pack over time. Not all organizations, but in general. Now, why? Because this is a race. We're moving. And so every day, we put these cars, either the great cars or the medium cars or the not so good cars, onto a racetrack, and they're going to go for a ride. And so as we're driving forward, what we find is that if you're at the back of the pack, you get worse. Why do you get worse? Because you don't see a problem happening to you. And so you say, well, if I was able to get away with not doing everything last year, I can do even less this year. Didn't hurt me last year. In fact, why am I even in this race at all? I should do the same thing every year, even though the world is changing. Why do humans do this? Well, there's the Peltzman effect. Sam Peltzman, economist at the University of Chicago. For those of you who remember when we were debating seatbelt laws in this country, I strongly do because I learned to drive about that time. Peltzman said, look, if you mandate that people wear seatbelts, they will kill more pedestrians. Because humans are programmed to take a certain amount of risk. And so if you make them personally feel safer, they will take more risk for themselves, but that risk will externalize onto other people. If you really want people to be safe, if you want them to be good drivers, one technology will make people good drivers. That technology, one small addition to your steering wheel. How many of you would ever drive faster than about 3 miles an hour with the 10-inch spike on your steering wheel? If I add risk to you, you will act to reduce risk. It's a really important concept. It's called risk compensation. Now, I cheated here because I said, what's your organization? I've been talking about organizations this whole time. Except organizations don't think. People do. People are making choices. Organizations are not some giant AI conglomerate Borg thing that has thoughts of its own. We think on its behalf. We project on it. Well, sometimes. Sometimes we think. What do we know about the human brain? What we know about the human brain is that it is made up of several parts. But function, when you think about consciousness, there's system 1 and system 2. And system 1 is the fast lizard brain. It is the brain that acts. And what it does is it takes all of the inputs from the world around you, and it processes them. You never think about this. You don't see it. And then it tells you something, or it does something. All of you who've driven, at some point you have driven home, pulled into your driveway, or parked your car on the street, and had that momentary realization that you don't remember a single bit of your drive. That is not your memory failing you. That is the fact that System 1 drove you home. System 1 is an expert system that pretends to be a human. It has no consciousness. It has no volition. It has no will. It just does. You have programmed it with rules throughout your entire life, and it will act on your behalf. It's really good at some things. It's also really bad at some things. System 1 is a bigot. It is the bigot that tells you when you're walking down a dark and deserted street that large males are scary. Why? Well, because it's a good survival reflex to have that opinion. Right? But it is a bigot. It is the reason we tell our children, don't judge a book by its cover. Well, because most of the time, judging a book by its cover is a really good way of deciding whether you want to read a book. Except it's not a great way of marginalizing people. But System 1 is the system that does that. It takes stereotypes. It creates them. Now, it is good at a lot of things. For instance, if I took this can of Monster Energy and said, I am going to throw it with an arm motion like this, who wants to predict exactly where it lands? Anyone? No one? But if I threw it, actually that would be kind of mean to throw Monster Energy at the crowd. Let's throw something a little bit nicer. Chocolate. If I throw chocolate at the crowd, almost caught it. Bad throw. Works much better if somebody actually catches it. There we go. She caught it. Why did she catch it? Did she calculate where it was going to be and do 3D calculus dealing with the fact that this was a spinning object in atmosphere? Heck no. System 1 figured out where it was going to go. Don't feel left out over there or over there. There we go. Right? System 1 is good at a bunch of things. It's bad at some other things. What's 2 times 2? 4. Did you think about it? Maybe somebody had a flashback to elementary school. I'm sorry if I did that. What's 17 times 85? No instant answer. System 1 can do simple math. We can train it. That's why we do multiplication tables as children. So we don't have to think about simple math. 17 times 85 is a little bit harder. So now a little more audience participation. Help folks wake up. So you see a line down the middle of my slides. I hope everybody learned left and right by now. If a word appears on the left side of the slide, that's this side of the line, Say the word left. If it appears on that side, say the word right. Okay? Really easy. Little more energy. Come on, more warning. There we go. I know, kind of boring. Y'all feel like you're back in the military. I know the Marine back there is very excited. Hooah. Keep going. What happened there? We teach our children left and right before we teach them to read, but System 1 is actually better at reading than figuring out left and right. Left and right are very confusing concepts. And so what happened was I did the first slide, and that trained your brain, even though I had these sorted left and right. You were just reading the words, and System 1 said, I can do this, and peer pressure made you want to go fast. Nobody wanted to be the last one talking. So everybody engaged System 1, and I bet your brains really weren't working on that first one. And then we did the second one, and your brain's like, I got this. I got this nailed. Left, right. What happened here? Right? And so what happened all of a sudden was you slowed down. System 1 got disengaged. Said, no. I can't do this anymore. I have to watch out for the trap. Right? There's lots of logic puzzles that kids do for each other that are hysterically funny when you're a kid. You know, Joey goes to the sporting goods store to buy, a bat and a ball, and he pays $105. The bat cost $100 more than the ball did. How much did the bat cost? Right? What jumped into your head was $100. It's $102.50. What happened? System 1 is good at simple math, bad at complex math. And now, for many people, especially in the security profession, when you hear a puzzle like that, your brain says, this is a trap. Because your System 1 has been taught that things are traps. When speakers stand up here and ask you a question, they're trying to trick you, because we all do it, because it's fun. Makes our points even better. And so that's what System 2 is. Right? System 1 is this system that gets trained by experience. This is the experience that we give to people in our companies. We say things like, you must every year go through annual security awareness training. And so we put them either through computer-based training, or even worse, we give them a slide deck and a human. And they read these words. Annual security awareness training is required for yada, 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 yada. Over half of the words in my slide deck are on this slide. Why? Because words on a slide deck are one of the worst ways to communicate with people. Because they see words on a slide deck and they hear yada, 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 I just got to get through this and I'll be done. How many people have ever been in an organization with computer-based training for security awareness or code of ethics or any of that, right? And these are designed to take you an hour. How many people took the whole hour? How many people have races with their coworkers about who can get it done fastest? Right? We had somebody when we did those, we had those for code of ethics who could get it done in 98 seconds. Right? And there's quizzes in it. He's like, click, 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 click. Oh, wrong, click. I got the right one. Okay, I'm good. What did they learn? Did they learn how to be more ethical? Wait, we just taught them the exact opposite. Ethics is about cheating your way through an annual requirement. Damn, got that one wrong. My apologies for the internet listeners. So this is a problem, right? And we have to understand, what is our actual job in an organization? How do organizations think about risk? What is risk inside these companies? In fact, it was really great. I was up one day doing a panel with Ger Ramlet, who was at the time the CIO of Bechtel. And so it was just the two of us, and it was billed as putting a CIO and CSO in the same room and making them talk to each other about the things they won't normally talk about. And so we had to get people from different organizations so that we wouldn't air too much dirty laundry. And Ger looks at me and he says, you know what risk is to me? Risk is anything that impacts my time or my budget. By definition, that's you. Everything you do is risk to me. I was like, huh, that's kind of interesting. So let's, look at the people in an organization and think about what their risks are. What matters to them? How do we incentivize them? If you're a product manager, you're probably thinking about the profit and loss of your products. You want to get market share against your competitors, right? These are the things that matter to you. Feature parity with someone. If you're the CEO, you'd like to be profitable. You want to make sure that the street really likes your numbers, that you don't say things that will cause problems for your business. If you're a sales rep, you have been handed a quota, and you would like to meet your quota. Now let's compare the sales rep to the business owner. Here's a dynamic most people don't really pay attention to. Right, let's say that I have a product that costs $5,000 to produce. Right? And so I want to sell it, my list price is $10,000. I'd like a 100% markup. Now my sales reps are quoted on revenue generally, and so they're going to make some percentage of revenue. So let's just say 5% is sort of an industry nominal. And so if you're a sales rep, would you be better off discounting this $10,000 product to sell 5 of them at $6,000, or better off selling maybe 1-ish at $10,000, right? 6 of them at $3,000 sounds really good. You've just tripled your commission. Well, except we only cleared $5,000 in both cases, but you got more commission. Right? These two people already have incentives that don't line up with each other because the sales rep is worried about not making quota. That's their only measure of risk. Our CFO wants to make sure that resources are being appropriately allocated. Do we have a good OpEx, CapEx distribution for the future? Have we brought in too many people this year that next year we might have to lay them off? It's always a bad place to be in. If you're a line employee, you really would like to know if you'll have a job next week. It's kind of an important risk that almost everybody lives with these days. And then security comes in, and the risk that we talk about is safety. Is this safe? I can measure the other 5 risks. Those are much easier to look at and talk about in concrete fashions. Safety is really hard. Now, I stereotyped everybody here. I put them in as the lizard, that type 1 lizard brain. What's their first reaction? People are complex. They are not categories. They all behave differently. So we have to think through them that way. And one of the things that humans have is a set point for risk tolerance. I talked about that with risk compensation, that if I take away risk, they'll go get more risk. So if we're trucking along and we learn about some new vulnerability, our heart bleeds with pain. All right, good, some people are awake here. Right? We take some action. We go patch our systems. We reissue and revoke our certificates so that we feel better. Right? We perceive that our risk is back to where it was, and we move on. And then, of course, the next risk comes out. We talk about how certificate revocation doesn't really work anymore. And what happens? We take some set of actions, and then we'll move on. And that's the story we like to tell ourselves about the world. Now, in reality, it's very rarely that pretty. In fact, what generally happens is we're moving along, some risk comes in, we take some action, and at the end of that action, we find that we are no longer as safe as we were. We perceive that our risk has gone up. This imbalance is really not healthy. We need to do something about this. So we have 2 real options as humans, short of putting in more resources, but nobody wants to do that. So we can tell ourselves a story. We can say, I was always this risky, and this is okay. And when this new risk came in, yeah, it brought me up to this new point, but my action actually made it better, put me back to where I was. And that's a story we can tell ourselves, but it's a hurtful story because we still have a higher level of risk than we were comfortable with before. And again, most people don't then want to say, well, let me act to reduce more risk. We want to tell ourselves stories. There's a much easier story to tell here. And the story is about Chicken Little. We say, well, who told me about this risk? What if that risk wasn't real? What if instead all of the risks that they have ever told me about aren't real? So I actually have different risks. Now, it's not actually actual risk, but I'm going to think about it differently. And in fact, I'm going to take all of the risks that they have told me about and downplay them. Right? Because it's this crazy security person. They're always talking about people with fantastic superpowers like the NSA. Come on, the NSA doesn't really monitor every conversation, do they? And so I can take all of that risk out, and I can go forward. And look at this. I'm much less risky than I used to be if all I do is ignore this one security person. Isn't that great? And in fact, I still have an imbalance, but now it's a good imbalance. I can go get a motorcycle. Right? Because I've got that residual risk. So how do we fix this? Well, we see risk differently than our peers in our businesses do. That's not necessarily a bad thing. What we can sometimes do is take risks that we are aware of, wait for an appropriate time, and that's when we bring them up to our business partners and say, hey, here's this risk. And not only is there this risk, here is this action that you can take to fix it. And they fix it. And now we feel better, and they feel better. And we can keep doing this. Here is this action you can take, and you can feel better. Muscle memory, right? We can train people in our organizations to behave understanding that this feels good. Making the world better is something that people really like to do. Why do they really like to do it? Because we like to think we're nice people. Nobody is the villain in their own story. How many people in here think that they're a villain? Aha. I knew I'd get Jason with that one. It's okay. Cops will come for you later. Right? But how many people in our organizations would think that we're the villain? Why? Because we wear black hats. We have stereotyped that. So Adrian is the only good one. He's got the white My Little Pony Dayglow hat. Right? Or sorry, we've changed. We don't wear hats anymore. We wear T-shirts. Look around you. How many black shirts do you see in here? That is the garb. That's system one. I came up here. Dave outed me as I professionally speak. Right? But I'm putting on a jacket. So everybody said, corporate drone. Some of you. Other people said, person I should listen to. They've succeeded. If I take the jacket off, you probably get a different impression. Right? But I am not the villain in my story. Neither are you. And this is an important thing. Understand that people want to be superheroes and help them be a superhero. Train them and teach them. Now, I've been talking about perceived risk and actual risk. Those are really tricky and hard words. Nobody likes to believe that they don't know what risk is and that they might get it wrong. But there are actions that we take that modify each of these. And we need to understand when those actions are helpful and when they're harmful. And so imagine, if you would, a world in which we could actually measure all risk. I know, fantasy. And so let's take perceived versus actual risk. And so at some point, we exist in the world. I'm just normalizing it to assume that perceived and actual risk are comparable. And what are the moves available to me? What are the things I can do? Well, sometimes I can ignore a threat. And that might not be me actually saying, I'm aware of this and I choose not to do anything. I just might not even know about it. Right? The NSA might be off doing something I don't know about right now. It's probably a very good probability. So are other governments. So are other adversaries. I don't know about a threat. My risk went up. But I don't know. I'm not aware of it. I didn't perceive a change. This is a very dangerous place to be. It's why we get paid, is to not let this happen. Now, alternately, I could become aware of a threat. Vulnerability gets dropped. Everybody learns about it. Our risk goes up because all of the adversarial folks are building exploits. But at least we're aware of it. When Heartbleed came out, functionally that was a realignment. There was a threat that we didn't know about. All of a sudden, we all become aware of it. Now, our risk goes up even more because everybody's aware of it, not just a small group of people. Now, there's always FUD. Now, often, talking about risks and vulnerabilities gets construed as FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Everybody who's actually in a paid security job probably gets tons of emails from all of the vendors, me among them, which says, you should be worried about Heartbleed. My favorite was yesterday, somebody mailed me about Heartbleed, the vulnerability du jour. And I was really wondering what time scale they lived on. And so FUD scares us. And we talk about how we got more dangerous, even though we didn't. You know, and every sales rep, they lead with these. They have the 3 slides at the start of their deck. That's, you know, it's the newspaper clipping slide that shows you everybody who has been hacked, breached, etc., even if the vendor couldn't help you with this. Then we have the slide which either quotes the Ponymon study or the DBIR, which says, look at the percentage of organizations that have had problems. And then we have a case study about a specific organization. How many people have ever seen a vendor deck that had those 3 slides in it? Come on. I know I've seen it because I have that vendor deck. Right? But this is FUD most of the time. We walk in and we talk about risks that don't apply to you. And we scare you, but you perceive your risk has gone up. This will cause you to need to act. And so you'll buy from me. Because there's nothing you can do for yourself at that point, but you buy and that makes you feel better. That's why people buy security technologies, to feel better. We hope it also makes them better. Now in the other direction, we can have stealth improvements. The world can get better, or we can get better and not know about it. This is one of my favorites. We'll have, you know, bugs that our developers have been ignoring for years, and they're tired of hearing us complain about them, and we're tired of talking about them, and one day they go fix it, but they're embarrassed about how long it took them to fix it, so they don't tell us. And so we're still walking around with these problems in our head, and like years later we discover that somebody had fixed it. And I'm thinking, I was worried about this risk for years for no good reason. This is not very functional. Now, we can occasionally get it right. We improve something. We understand how we've made the world safer. The world gets safer. Also a very positive thing. And then, of course, our favorite, security theater, the TSA, my favorite one. How many people fly? How many people think the TSA makes you safer when you fly? How many people think the TSA believes they make you safer when you're flying? It's the definition of security theater right there. Somebody believes that the world is safer, but it's not, at least from our perspective. Now, from the TSA's perspective, it may be that the harm they're trying to prevent is not another airplane blowing up or being hijacked. Maybe the harm they're trying to protect against is people with no confidence in the airline industry refusing to fly, and the economic harm that might cause. Think about PCI DSS. Does PCI prevent breaches? We have some pretty good evidence that it doesn't. Right? Now, from Visa's perspective, PCI was about ensuring that there was no regulation on them. Instead, they created a regulation on everybody else. But maybe what it's really about is ensuring that you will continue to use your credit card to buy stuff online. Reduce the friction of commerce, because that's important for our economy. Always good to remember, people are not the villain in their own story. We can laugh at the TSA. Most people involved at the TSA, and certainly the policymakers, believe that they are doing the right thing, and we must understand why, if we would ever like to convince them. Now, I left out 2 directions, which are sort of the weird directions, right? What happens when you improve one but make the other worse? So my favorite one, blind compliance. We do stuff because the auditor told us to, or I've got a checklist. And sometimes that makes us demonstrably less safe. One of my favorite ones, I was actually in Britain, and I'm sorry you can't really read the print on this one. And there was an actual sticker inside the shower in the hotel. And it says, for your comfort and safety, I always love those 2 words put together, before showering, please ensure that the bath mat is securely in place, secure again, and the shower curtain is is inside the bath, so it's not outside. Now you're thinking they probably put this up to reduce their liability, that they have told you how to correctly use the safety devices inside the shower such that you do not slip and crack your head and blame them for being negligent or reckless and not telling you. Right? So from their perspective, that's probably why they did it. You know what 2 things were not in this hotel bathroom? A shower curtain and a bath mat. So they went from being negligent to being actively reckless. They're now conscious of the 2 security things that they probably ought to have had, didn't act to put them in, but they felt safer because they had put this sticker up. So whoever was in charge, you know, across the chain felt that they had reduced their liability, when in fact, the operational details on the ground meant that they had done the exact opposite. Now, I was much safer in that shower than I normally am, let me tell you, because I'm like, oh man, this is a dangerous shower. And it's one of those, the European style showers that doesn't have a shower door. So I'm like, this is crazy. Let me take my 30-second shower and be done. Now on the other side, we have awareness. And now I started off by mocking awareness. Right? I made fun of awareness training because most awareness trainings are bad. They're not about awareness. They're about compliance. Every year, we must mark down that you received awareness training. That requirement is probably the single worst requirement from an awareness perspective, because it causes us to try to create one awareness program that applies to our admins, our receptionists, our developers, our architects, and our CEO, and just keep naming. Try to find something that fits all of those people. Right? Real awareness. I was at Source Boston keynoting a year and a half ago, and right before I got up, the Dave equivalent comes up and says, I'd like you all to be a little bit careful. Last night, one of the conference goers was mugged on their way to the ATM around the corner. So just be careful. And everybody pauses. And you hear that story. Now, before you heard that story, how did you probably feel about yourself? If you're a conference goer, imagine if I'd said, watch out, the ATM out there has been skimming credit cards. You probably would all believe me because they were in a casino. But before you knew, you had one set of actions you were going to take. Then after you heard about it, this might change the way you operate in the world. Your risk didn't actually change. But you know something? Since people started talking about ATM skimmers, the only ATMs that I use are behind TSA checkpoints. I think the TSA is good for one thing. Maybe they'll stop skimmers. Yet before I put my card in there, I grab the faceplate and I'm yanking that thing around. You get some great looks from people. I've taken an action because I became aware, even though my risk itself didn't change, but my actions now make me safer. When you hear about muggings, you change your behavior. Right? Awareness is a good thing if it's responsible awareness, if it's becoming aware of risks that are in the world that you were previously unaware of. So let's come back to the prisoner's dilemma. Now, the problem with the prisoner's dilemma I talked about earlier is that we test prisoner's dilemmas on grad students. Grad students, I'm sorry if anybody in here are them, but they are not a representative sample of the human population, nor of the human condition, especially because they have an extra incentive, because the person conducting the test is generally the professor who will be signing off on their thesis. So they want to ensure that they give them good results. So in Germany, somebody's decided, well, if we have a prisoner's dilemma, why don't we test this on prisoners? It's not like they're going anywhere and can run away if we abuse them from testing. Now, the standard way that we actually test prisoner's dilemma is not threaten to throw grad students in jail or to tell convicts are going to spend more time in jail. In fact, you can change these numbers and give them money and see what will happen. And so that's what we did. And now, if you recall, with grad students, they rat each other out a lot. With prisoners, they actually will cooperate with each other 30% of the time. That's massive. That's more than double the rate at which a grad student will do it. And we think grad students are nice people. And they will only defect and cheat on each other 19% of the time. It's a massive and fundamental difference. Now, why? They don't know. The researchers just did this study, so they don't yet have conclusions. But I'm not a researcher, so I get to make up stories. And I get to tell myself what is different about the prisoners and the grad students. Well, the grad students are trying to please the man. The prisoners recognize that their adversary is the man. And I'm using all caps there. Right? So the researchers come in, and what are the prisoners trying to do? Maximize total value into the prison ecosystem. Right? Get more money. And we know that the person that we're fighting has a stake in this. This is not a true prisoner's dilemma, because this is a law enforcement dilemma. Right? That's what we're modeling here. There's something called the true prisoner's dilemma that, imagine a universe in which there exists a galactic entity that makes toothpicks. And that is the only thing that matters to it, is how many toothpicks exist in its world. And at some point, it discovers a wormhole to our world. Right? And then you can create a model where it's trying to maximize toothpicks and we are trying to save human lives. And to each of us, that is the most important thing. It's a better model than this is. But the important thing here is that for years, we have talked about the prisoner's dilemma as if it is a two-player game. And it is not. It is a story we have told ourselves, but it is a three-player game. And the people who recognize it's a three-player game can change behavior. So, we also have to understand that people don't make a one decision and then they're stuck with it for the rest of their life. They make lots of decisions. So we talk about residual risk, or the risk that you then inherit the next time you go make a decision. And so business owners who are worried about P&L from their last product now have to worry about their competitors. I had 20% market share, now I only have 19. How do I get up to 21? How do I move faster? CEOs who are balancing across a number of products and want to balance their risk portfolio in the same way that wealth planners for years have told you, so that you'll give them more money, to balance the risk in your retirement accounts. CEOs are doing the same thing for their businesses. Sales reps who've learned, I didn't make quota last quarter, therefore this quarter I will sell the things that will get me to quota the fastest. CFOs who know that last time you came in over budget, and so why should they believe your numbers this time? Employees who see unprofitability in a business and start moving, right? Or who get retained with an extra bonus this year and then next year expect the same bonus, don't see it, and say, well, it's time for me to move on. And then us, in the security profession. We learn that is it safe doesn't work so well, so we'll give people checklists. Right? And this is the dynamic that we all function in an organization. So how do we get better? And I've given you 50 minutes of, oh my God, the world is ending, and here's some ways to think about the human brain. So success is if we can have better conversations about risk. And we want to have conversations. This is not about us making decision or having judgment on people. It's about a conversation, because we want to engage system 2. So when somebody comes to us and says, here is my project, is it safe? You know what the best answer is? I don't know. You tell me. Is this safe? Now, the first time you do this to somebody, they're like, what? What do you want me to do? I don't understand that question. Yeah, I think it's safe. Say, no. Teach them. This is how you think about safety. As an example, so Heartbleed came out. I know, I'm dropping that everywhere. Heartbleed. Do you know how many components on networks are built against OpenSSL that don't even talk on the network? Because OpenSSL has a crypto component in it that lots of programs will use. How do you know if you need to patch a system? Right? So you can say to somebody who says, well, should I patch for Heartbleed? You can say, well, here's how we would think about whether or not you're safe. Do you talk on the network using an OpenSSL, using SSL? Right? And if so, you're probably not safe. And if you don't, you might be safe. You might want to compile without heartbeats anyway, or only use the OpenSSL crypto component. Now, once you do that, now people can assess risk on their own, or with your help, and they can make conversations about safety. And the important thing in here is that adverb. I think this is reasonably safe. Right? It's not about being safe or not safe. It's about, did you make a reasonable choice? And the important part is they now own awareness of the risk. That's the most important thing out of this conversation, is that the person who is aware of the risk is the person whose choice it is to engage in it. If I'm aware of a risk that you are taking, doesn't change your behavior, does it? If you're aware of your risk, change your behavior. And so now you can ask people things like, great, maybe you can fix this in the next release. Or hey, your hashing algorithm sucks, but can you at least version it? Because you're going to have a successful product, and we will want to modify that version later. Great. Easy changes for people to make. So how do you get better? Now imagine, this is the security professional's job. 3 things we've got to do, right? We've got to deal with computer security, and network security, and data security, and it's like juggling. 3 balls, easy to juggle, right? Now we can add into this, we have to worry about adversaries, we have to worry about metrics, we have to tell the board of directors, how great we are. And so now, we're juggling 5 balls. Not so good. But that's not even the extent of our jobs. We have lots of things. We have to worry about innovation, internationalization, supportability, sustainability, the law, etc. We've got 17 balls to juggle. How do you juggle them all? You know what the answer is? You don't. Pick up 3 balls and juggle those. When you get good at those, set one down, pick up another ball. And maybe the 3 that you pick involve innovation and sustainability so that you build yourselves tools to get better. You increase your capabilities and your skills so that tomorrow you are of more value to the business. So we come back to value being resources times capabilities. And the goal that we should have as a security professional or a security organization is to increase the value that we provide. And now often we hear stories about how to increase our resources. Here is how to go to the CFO and make a business case to get more money. I have a sad lesson and truth for people. CFOs don't have money. All of it is already allocated. If the CFO gives you money, it's because they took it away from somebody else. And so you have to demonstrate to the CFO that you can spend that money better than this other person can. And so what are they going to look at? They're going to look at your capabilities. A better approach is to first improve your capabilities. How do you create surplus? Be able to do more tomorrow with the same you had today. When I first started looking at this as a concept, so it was about 2.5 years ago, I had 6 people that worked for me. I'd had 11 the month before. Now, those 5 people still work for Akamai. They just were moved into another organization where we thought they could be more effective, actually working for the CIO. And I had 6 people. It really didn't feel very good. Now, in those 2.5 years, my CFO has never given me another headcount. My boss hasn't given me any headcount. I have 42 people that work for me. How? Because I took my 6 people, we increased our capabilities, and then we went around to our business partners and we provided value to them so that they said, wow, this is great. And one of our vice presidents of sales said, you know, this is great that when customers ask us why they should trust us, you guys are able to answer it, but the backlog is so long, would you like another person? Sure. So instead of a quota-bearing sales rep, they handed me headcount for an evangelist. An engineering organization said, hey, it would be better if we could model into our QA organization how adversaries would attack us. Could you provide us that capability? And we said, sure. 42 people, all coming from other organizations who think we can do it better than they can. And then our goal is to teach them. I don't want to have 1,000 people in my security organization. I'd love it if I could get back down to 12. Not because I don't like my people. I love them. But because I want to empower my business to make wise choices. And that should be your goal. So thank you all very much. I appreciate your time this morning, especially those of you who had a little bit too much to drink last night. My slides are all up at csoandy.com, as is a reading list for those of you who would like to come to your own conclusions about cognitive science. You don't have to rely on mine. And I live tweeted my own keynote. Hopefully those tweets all went out, so you can go read the things I thought were fun takeaways. Thanks very much. How bad is the Heartbleed virus going to impact your Windows XP workstations? Well, the fact that Jason has Windows XP workstations is part of the problem. Although the reality is pretty badly. And the reason actually is that the biggest problem that we have with the certificate infrastructure right now is Windows XP. Windows XP does not support SNI. SNI gives us serious heartburn when it comes to dealing with certificates. None intended. Enjoy. Everybody go enjoy your coffee break.
Everybody, a big round of applause for Andy Ellis.